Yeah, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in again to another episode of the Colorado Kayak Fishing Club podcast. We just wrapped up the All-American Kayak Classic down at Truman. First, I just want to give a big shout out to everybody that made the trip. Colorado, I think, was actually the most represented state, I believe, even over Missouri at the Classic. Could be wrong on that if Missouri has more, but they did make a special shout out for Colorado. Had over 30 anglers there. Um, just really awesome event. I know the conditions were super tough, and honestly, I had a couple of really bad days out there, but we made up for it kind of at the end there. But it was a grind. It was a grind. We're going to talk to Eric Allee. Placed eighth place out of 189 anglers there. So huge shout out to him. We'll get him on here in a second. I do have a couple of housekeeping notes just as our season's getting more underway. First off, our next tournament, it's a couple weeks out, is the Pueblo Multi and Bass Tournament. It's one of the biggest ones of the year that we always have down there. That is May 18th for the Multi and 19th for the Bass. If you already fished the last one up at Boyd and you've already got your membership and everything taken care of, if you haven't done that and you haven't fished a tournament, make sure you have your membership squared away and you're ready to go. Also, we got the CKB tournament up at Horsetooth, just more Colorado news there. So that's this weekend for everybody going. Good luck. And I know they got that qualifier for the Wyoming thing, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's bring in our guest here, Mr. Eric Allee. Eric, what's up?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm excited. I watch the cast every chance I get, and excited to be on. If you hear a bunch of banging and stuff like that in the background, it's just my sweet lady in the kitchen.
Okay, right on. She's just telling you what not to say. Don't say that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome, cool. Yeah, a little note to everybody that's tuning in here. I see we got a few people already. Just make sure you allow StreamYard to show your comments. That way we'll know who it is that's commenting in here. But cool. Yeah, live viewer stuff will pop up here. So, Eric, thanks for coming on. And before we get into all of the All-American trip, just kind of tell everybody, everybody probably knows you already, but people that are kind of tuning in, newer to the club, who are you? Are you from here, and what brought you into fishing?
yeah. What brought me into fishing? That's an interesting question. Some people they start with RC cars, or maybe dude, I don't know anything else to put. I'm such a fishing geek, like Pokemon or whatever when they're kids, right? Dude, it was fishing and then sports, and it's been like that my whole life. So there's not been I think 4 years old, probably the same that I am now. There's been no difference. Rode my bike to lakes and all the rest of the stuff. So it sports sidetracked me for a little bit. Music sidetracked me for a little bit, but fishing has always been the constant, right? And it's my dad still has it actually, a diesel repair company. So my mom actually took me more than anybody when I was a kid. And then, I started writing at a young age. I think seems like a lifetime ago now, but I was in my early 20s when I started writing for Colorado Fishing and Hunting News. And then I don't remember on the kayak side when I first knew it was going to be my thing. I know the first kayak I got was an Ascend that I traded a welder for, actually.
Okay.
I took it out. I was like, this is the best thing ever, because I came from a pontoon boat, a personal pontoon, no waders, none of that stuff. And then the wind started blowing, and I was like, dude, this is for the birds. Like I you know what I mean? It's not my thing. And then Matt Neverman, he was a Hobie team guy. This is, again, years and years ago. He tried to sell me an old team boat. And if Matt if he wouldn't have been so persistent, borderlining harassment to get me to buy my first pedal driven kayak, I don't know that it would have stuck. I remember show you how long ago it was. I paid $2,100 for the kayak. It was a Hobie Pro Angler, a 14.
That's a long time ago for that price on a Hobie 14. Yeah.
And I think I took it out 75 days straight. Um, and like I said, it's never slowed down. If anything, I get more obsessive the older that I get. Um, I love fishing. I love our fishing community. I think that, to echo what you said on the entry, Colorado kayak fishing community is special. The anglers are special, both on the talent side and on the giving side, and I'm just proud to be a part of it.
Awesome. And you said that pro angler, is that the same one that you're in now?
No, so dude, I don't know if you knew that this was going to be a tell all, but that's what we're doing, old buddy, because that's the only way I know how to do it.
Let's go for it.
So I was on the Hobie fishing team with Eileen at the New Anchorage. That was the Hobie dealership up north for the longest time.
Okay.
And so I was on the local team for a couple of years, and then I was on the regional team for, I think it was 3 or 4 years, until my mom got really sick. And then I communicated. I had more sponsors at the time, and I let them know that, like, hey, my mom's sick, and this, that, and the third. And Hobie never got back to me. They never responded to me. So this is the last team boat that I got, and it will most likely be the last Hobie I will ever own. It's not like, I love waterline sports. I love Shields. I love a lot of the partners that we have, but that's stuck in my craw. So I'm fishing out of it until I'm going to ride it until the wheels fall off. Put it to you that way.
No, I gotcha. All right, and then we'll come back to you, but let's kind of go into the All-American. So this was a 2-day tournament. It's best 5 fish for each day, which is different. So the All-American Series, which is different from the Classic, they do best top 10 fish out of both days. So you can catch 10 fish one day, and that'll be all your fish. But this is best 5, just kind of like the standard that everybody typically does. And it was a Friday, Saturday event, kind of lining up to it on Saturday. Saturday was the Saturday before. Was pretty nice, and then Sunday, oh boy, the weather came, and it came, and it came, and it came. There were tornado warnings everywhere. I was actually in a tent hearing tornado sirens, and Alex Rojas, his tent failed on him, got soaked in the middle of the night, and lost. It was a thing. But the water level and clarity changed drastically throughout the week, so which could be a gigantic struggle for people in Colorado that are used to fishing very clear water. But not even that, everybody was struggling to find any type of clear water without debris in it. And the water rose, I think, upwards of 12, I heard even 14 feet at one point. So, and that all came within a week. So that kind of sets up what was going on with the lake. Tell us about your trip there, how much pre-fishing you had, and just kind of what your mindset was maybe going into those situations, or that type of scenario.
Yeah, so we showed up late. I want to say it was Tuesday afternoon. And anytime somebody posts something, I'm just like everybody else. I'm examining it. I'm looking at the water clarity. I'm trying to get everything that I can from it. We had a lodging kind of goof up, so we had to wake up Wednesday morning and take care of that. So we didn't get on the water until Wednesday at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We talked to Jared at Everhart's. We wanted launch points. You know what I mean? He gave us the map that, Leslie does such a good job of documenting the experience and stuff, and I'm very poor at that. But so we found somewhere, and we knew that it was gonna storm again. So the launch point that we went to on the first day of pre-fishing, I don't think it would have been doable if there was weather. And, it was you had to go down and up in this kind of business. And on top of that, I saw spawning gar. Leslie caught a little largemouth. I think he caught a channel cat too. But nothing. Right. So we leave after that day. And it was actually the first time Leslie had her motor on the water too. So a lot of things at play here. So then I get home, and I'm at peace with not doing well at that point. It's like, the drive has been long and all the rest of the stuff. And then I can't quit looking at maps. I can't quit studying. And so I do what I'm assuming a lot of us did, is I found the most recent satellite images that I could. I eliminated what I thought was prime water, what I thought that would be most crowded, and I tried to find marginal water.
Yeah.
So on day 2, we went to pre-fish an area that the launch point that I was most excited about. We got there and Corey Doyle was there. And
hold on, hold the horses there, because I got a comment from Mr. Doyle himself. Go Nuggets! Yeah, that's right.
I think he might be. Leslie is actually mad at me for my take on the Nuggets right now, but we ran into Corey, and it was one of those things where it's like he was the only person there, and I just thought it was better to give it to him. Right? He was there first. This is an assumption on my part where I could be very wrong, but I was assuming he was working with something there, and there's enough water to where I figured we'll go to another spot. So we went not very far from there, and we launched. And at this point, again, like I said, I'm at peace with just being with my wife. It's one of those things where it's funny I say that. I almost think it's like giving myself an out a little bit, where it's like, okay, if I suck, it's because of this happened and this happened, instead of just going, I suck because I suck. You know what I mean? Like it's anybody that's talked to me after a tournament where I don't do good, the excuses will come rolling in. But anyway, so we launch at this second point, and this is the last day, right? This is the last day before the Derby. And I was throwing a square bill next to a brush pile, and I hooked a green sunfish. And that's all I needed. After I hooked the green sunfish, I switched to this. It's a brush hog, and I don't know if you could tell, I dyed the tip chartreuse, and I stuck 2 largemouth. We left 10 minutes later. Because it's very visual. Like, I think it was probably harder for you guys that got to see the lake before it came up, because then you're visualizing the stuff that you fished before, trying to reach it, all the rest of that stuff. I was only working with what was in front of me, and by seeing those 2 fish that I caught, one was a 17, the other one was a 16, I had a game plan. Now, I still didn't know that I wasn't going to suck. That could have been the only 2 fish there, but I don't need a lot to get geeked up about. And from that point on, I think we went and fished the spillway. We caught some white bass and stuff like that. I was present, meaning I was there with my wife. My head was not. I was trying to figure out what my A, B, and C was going to be during the tournament. And then we get back to the place, and dude, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I felt like, because here's the other thing, there was nobody where we were at either until we started leaving. When we left, I mean, it's a bigger boat ramp, so we ran into people when we left, and even then, I got an NK 300 now, so it's like I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get to the spots. Yeah. So, but we leave there, we go to Everhart's, and I stock up on brush hogs, multiple sizes, just to be able to make sure I could match the hatch. I get trick worms, I get finesse worms, all based on the color of green pumpkin that's Zoom. Get back to the place, I dye all the tails chartreuse. I don't know that makes a huge difference, but anytime I can do something more, I feel like I get a return.
Yeah.
And that was pre-fishing, and then we watched Everybody Loves Raymond 18 times in a row.
That's awesome. You said, so the sunfish thing.
Mm-hmm.
So so sunfish, they do move, but they're probably hugged up there. What makes you go to more of a static bait than a moving bait when you're seeing that? And I know some people will throw more of, the even like the mega bass or some more imitators now of like what threw you onto that over any type of moving bait or like a glide or some type of fish replica?
So it was the placement in the brush piles. So when the water level rises, if the fish are nose to the bank, that kind of changes things for me. That to me, that means they're moving up with the water level and they're more active in their hunting. When I was catching them on the edge of brush piles, I felt like they were ambushing. and they weren't willing to move far. So, even a glide bait, like you think about a glide bait or a jerk bait, for instance, I know forward facing sonar has proved that they can track from a distance, even in muddy water. But I got the feeling from the bites that I got that they weren't willing to move a lot. So the idea of getting them to chase, I didn't feel and this isn't just my firsthand knowledge, it's also everybody saying the bite's super tough. So if the same exact thing happened with the 2 bass that I caught, but it was on the shoreline, it would have completely changed my approach. But it was probably 5 to 7 feet of water on the outside or side of brush piles. So in my head, I'm visualizing lazy bass sticking in the brush piles, waiting for dumb sunfish to get too close, but they're not going to move this far to eat them. They're going to wait until they're right in their wheelhouse, and then they're going to pop them. At least that's my theory.
Yeah, no, that's cool. The reason I kind of asked that, so I had a very similar pre-fish. And I think we were kind of in the same boat. We both had a spot that was smaller, but we knew that they were in there. And I pulled a limit out the first day, and the second day I broke one off. It was stupid, and then I had one that was like 11 7/8. But the fish were in there, and it was the same thing. It was kind of 5 to 7 foot brush, and there was a island kind of bush as a pocket. And honestly, before that flood, it was probably out of water entirely. And I was wondering if the fish would even push up, if they'd already spawned and had beds, if they were going to push up into that stuff. But I couldn't get anything to go on the dirty water we were in, and I didn't have it. Like, I had all finesse stuff kind of set up, and I had a couple of stuff for jigs, but I didn't have any braid on any of my spools. So it was 10:30. I was spooling out one of the nights after we were all pre-fishing at the house, and I ran to Walmart at 10:30, and I said, I gotta get some braid. I'm gonna flip this crap. And I went in there, and the first series of casts was probably 3 casts in. I threw it was a trocar flipping hook with a D-bomb on it, in black and red, and I got kind of but it was inside the bush. I had 3 fish follow the 1 fish that bit, and I said, okay, that was all I needed to know, that they were together. They were just sucked in there. And then I flipped another bush that was probably 7 or 8 feet deep, more like a tree, and then the same thing. I stuck that one, and I left, and I knew. And then I just soaked that area for 2 days. And I got a couple on the banks, kind of the same thing, off the edges of them on a wacky, but it was tough. Yeah.
Oh, dude. Brutal.
Kind of talk about that. Like, talk about your bite, I guess. So let's get into the tournament. You set a couple free fishing, you go back. What's day 1 look like for you?
And if you do, I apologize if you can hear the wash machine. My wife is always on top of everything, so she's washing dishes in the back.
My dryer's going in the back.
Okay, perfect. So we launch, and I try not to be so intense when we talk fishing after the stuff, but I'm very, very intense going into a tournament. It's probably the sports and the competitive aspect. So my focus is probably too sharp to the point to where it's not productive going into the tournament. Like, you get the jitters and all the rest of the stuff, which, the amount of people that were in the tournament, the fact that we're representing Colorado, pressure is the wrong word, because you've dealt with real pressure situations in your life. Fishing a tournament's not, just in the grand scheme of things, it's not pressure. But anyways, I go to the spots, and I tried to get something to go on topwater, because when I caught my fish pre-fishing, it was a little bit later. So I threw a sneaky rat, because again, I always want to be against the grain whenever possible. I don't. If everybody else is throwing a buzzbait, I'll throw a big rat. If everybody's throwing a big rat, I'll throw a buzzbait. I'm just that kind of angler. I don't want common results, so I try to do as much uncommon things as I can do, which leads up to nothing on top water. Like, do nothing. I didn't even turn a fish, and it's that thing that we all get when it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in a tournament when you haven't gotten a bite. I'm going to get skunked. Try to be cool with it. Try to blah, blah, blah. And then I got the first pop on a brush hog. And I always say the same thing. As soon as I stick the first one, it's all right. We got one now, but let's get two. So I think I stuck the first two on a brush hog, and not overly big fish, but solid tournament fish. And then that bite died. So what I did is I switched again. The color and the theme is kind of the same. I switched to a Nico rig, chartreuse dip tail, and as soon as they started reacting to that, it's what I was going to do the rest of the tournament. I don't remember how many times I upgraded on day one. I had an 18 and a quarter, an 18 and a half. I think I had 14s were kind of the rest of them. But I had this area just like your area where it was a handful of prime spots, and I would rotate them. I would let them rest. I would rotate them. And when I knew I had a solid bag, I started looking at other options. So I started looking for offshore stuff, thinking that maybe there was another population of fish deeper. I actually found a school of 12-inch spots doing that. Very Pueblo-esque, actually. Jigging a minnow thing, not something I felt that I could benefit from on day two. And then I went up a little bit, and it was a little bit crowded, so I didn't see anything there. And then I started looking around, and the idea was I knew that this was a solid day one, but then this is before I had my last upgrade. But I know that 2-day tournaments, and this is just from following all you guys in the past, day two is much harder than day one. So I'm really trying to figure something out to where if I beat this spot up so bad that I have a backup, I don't find anything. I go back, and I'm very stoic during tournaments. I don't know if that's the right term, but I don't show emotion, or at least I try not to. And I get to this spot where I can see fish. It's about 10 foot. It's next to a buoy line, and Truman. There's all this stuff that's moving in, so it kind of creates a canopy of sorts. And I could see bass ambushing bait fish. I could see it, but I couldn't get them to go because of the depth. So I cast out the Nico rig. I pop it a couple times. I get bit, and it feels solid. Then it pops off. It happened 3 times, and on the third time, I reel down. I put the wood to her, and she comes 3 feet out of the water. It's an 18 and a half, and those Truman fish.
They're mean.
Yeah, and I'm comparing them to Boyd, so it's a little bit different. I get her in the net. Well, I'll tell you this first. When she went airborne, I thought it was an 8-pounder. Like it was, when you're, tooth and nail trying to go from 12 inches to 14 inches, and then a 4-pounder goes all the way out of the water. It's just, so anyways, I get her in the net, and dude, I lose it. I scream, I holler, I was just, and and then after day one, I'm thinking it's still Truman, right? Like, after day one, I think I was in 13th, something like that. And a lot of us were doing well after day one.
Yeah. Let me pull it up. Let's see here. I've got All American here. Let's see if I can share it. All right, it's being weird, but we gotta be able to share this one. There we go. All right, cool. So let's see if I can get us kind of out of the way. There we go. So yeah, so day one, it's in Nebraska, Arkansas, Missouri. Chad Davison, who always does well there. Paul Roth, Jared from Everhart, Matt Arledge, yeah, 13th here. And then let's look at a couple of these. So this is at 18.5, golly.
Yeah, that's the one I went nuts on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had one. It was a 16 and a half, but it was banging its tail so hard as I was trying to measure that thing on the board I've never seen a fish do it that, like, not give up that much while measuring them. It was crazy. Gosh, these are good fish though.
Yeah,
Another 18 and a
yeah.
quarter.
Just the way that they're built and the way that they fight, it was just. But you look so those 14s, 14 and a quarter, like I upgraded those from 12s, 12 and a quarter, that kind of thing.
How many fish do you think, did you only cull 3, or how many fish do you think you caught as keepers?
Gosh, dude, I don't know. I couldn't tell you the more that I think about it, because I was on, there was one brush pile that a lot of them were loaded up on, and then I found all those spots too. But I think at that time I already had, a limit of 14s. No, that's not true, because I did upgrade. Like I said, I had the 12s. I probably culled 3 or 4 times. I think.
Okay. Yeah, it's got 5 plus 3 here on it on turning
Yeah.
X. I didn't know if you caught a bunch more that were just not culls for you, because I think the bite was so tough. You see a lot of guys, they caught 5 fish or 5 plus 1, and I was in that boat. I had more fish day 1. I think I caught 7 or 8 that were keepers,
Yeah.
but day 2 it was 4, and that 5th one just kicked my butt. So
See,
it's a tough bite.
and I couldn't find the funny thing is day 2 I couldn't find the spots that I found day 1. The little offshore thing, and it was because, like I said, my mindset was like this. I'm thinking everybody's in the 90s, and I'm just trying to finish top 20. Like that. That was my goal was top 20 with pre-fishing and everything else.
Yep.
And yeah, that was kind of it for day 1. I'm not going to say I was satisfied. Sweet lady, that was day 3 or day 2, excuse me.
I only had 3 and tried to leave.
So that will do. So day 2, I'm trying to think of how to tactfully say what I want to say here. Day 2 was a little more busy than day 1. I'll leave it at that. And I had 3 fish, and
Were you trying to get off a spot?
I was trying to let it rest, but the problem is other people were getting on it. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. Day 1, I'm old school, dude. If you're not there on day 1, don't. It's just my mindset. It's tournament fishing. Everybody has their own approach, so I'll leave it at that. But I had 3, and this is where multiple times at Boyd I'll leave a spot because I get flustered when I should just beat it up. I actually talked to Leslie the day before after day 1. And I said, I'm going to beat this spot up all day long. Whether I sink or swim, this is going to be the spot. So I go to leave, and I pass Leslie when I'm leaving. And she goes, what are you doing? So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go look for fish. She goes, that's not what you told me. And she has a way of keeping me to my word.
Stick to the plan. Yeah.
And I turned my ass around, and I caught a limit. 4 of my fish were super, super solid, and there was a 12.75 I couldn't get rid of. And the thing that sucks is I had 2 opportunities. I think you and Alex will probably understand this more than maybe most, because you guys pour everything into it. When you're at the point where you're so tired, you're relying on muscle memory, and then, like, at my age, it doesn't always work the way you want it to. I had probably a 14, maybe a 15 that I had hooked with one of the 2 or 3 different ways I was fishing this Nico rig, and I didn't fight it properly. So I'm keeping the rod tip down to try to keep it from jumping, and at some point the line got caught in the reel or on the rod tip or something like that, and that's all it needed for that fish to come unbuttoned. It was one of 3 fish that I lost the entire time I was there. But at that point, I was more frustrated with the crowd than I was me losing fish, to be honest.
Yeah. I lost one. Alex would know if he was watching where this was at. I think it was when we were pre-fishing, maybe, or maybe it was even at Boyd. What was I doing? But I I was fishing and I had my bail open and the bite hit right away. And I went to close the bail and set into my hand
Uh,
and it screwed up and I lost the fish on that one. I think that was like a pre-fishing day, but it was a good fish too. It really sucked because he dove right into all the crap, you know.
yeah.
But I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
you're talking about pre-fishing. What do you think the optimal amount of pre-fishing is for like one of these? I mean, obviously for our trails, we fish a Saturday, maybe you get there a day early if you can, or the weekend before and fish it. But you go to a national trail, that's something that's always kind of been on my mind as I'm doing this a little bit more now. It's like, how many days is too much? And sometimes I feel like I kind of go because I knew that whole lake. I was
Mhm.
there from Sunday. I knew which water was clear, which water was dirty, and that paid off to, a little bit. But I probably did too much. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Elite Series, they get 3 days, right? I think there's a couple things. So if I could have been there since Sunday, I would have, 1,000%. Like I'm like you. I want all the information I can get. That way, I can decipher a game plan and I can decide where to go and stuff like that. But I do think that there's some exhaustion that comes into play.
Mhm.
Um, on a bigger body of water, I think you can do it in 3 days, even in a kayak. Um, that being said, I think that so much of what we do, like talking to or listening to the guy that won, he didn't do anything different than you and I did. What he did, though, is he lucked into, and this is not taking anything away from him, because this is tournament fishing. He lucked into a bunch of females the first day that they moved up. And
Yeah.
so much of what we do is controlled gambling. Really, I mean, when you think about it. And for our local tournaments, I like to get a day. Up until probably 2 years ago, I never even got that. I would show up on game day, um, and if it worked out, great. If it didn't work out, I would find an excuse why. But again, it's one of those things. Like I look at my wife, and she actually prefers not to pre-fish. She likes to get out there, and I think there's something to be said for both. I'm very planned. I like to have a game plan. I like to have an A, B, and C if I can, but I typically do best when I just go fishing. So it's I wish I had like a concrete answer, um, but I think 3 days. I think the Elite Series has a pretty good thing, and granted they're in glitter boats and we're in plastic boats, but
Yeah.
I think it gives you a general idea, and I think that for me it's more about confidence than it is about anything else.
Right. And it's kind of back to the tournament a little bid. How did you
Mhm.
feel day two? Kind of how the day was setting up for you. You got those three, you tried to leave, but you came back. How'd you feel kind of towards the end of the tournament? And I'm just kind of curious if your bite stopped at all. Mine stopped when
Mhm.
the sun came out, and I asked actually the winner of it. He was on a podcast, and he said his bite stopped as well when
Mhm.
the sun came out. He had to find him under the shade. But my last fish came at the last drop of rain that we got, and that was it for me.
Unbelievable. Uh,
So how about you?
yeah, so same thing. It didn't die, but it definitely slowed down dramatically. And I tried to do the shade thing. I had one that I caught on closer to the bank on shade that was created by a little brush pile that was on the bank, and I just needed one is an idea, two is a theory, three is a pattern, right? So
Yeah.
I needed something else to tell me I was okay to leave my area, and I never got that feedback. So I just kept cycling through. It was one of those things where it's like I would look at people that were on the spots that I was fishing, and I would try to burn a hole in their back of their head with my eyeballs, and I would go from spot to spot, and I I post something on Facebook on most tournament days, or at least I try to, and Instagram, and it's 5 bites. Um, if you fish clean, you need 5 bites, right? Um, and that's something that I never try to lose track of. Where it's like this isn't, and this is going to sound overly dramatic, and I'm going to be a diva here or whatever you want to say, but this isn't fun fishing. You know what I mean? So if you dedicate yourself to getting 5 bites, and then you break down how many hours you have to get 5 bites, it becomes doable. You know what I mean? It's okay. Every 2 hours, if I get a bite, I'm on pace. And it's one of those things I try not to lose track of, but at the same time, we're tournament anglers, dude. We're super emotional. Like there's no, you're either KVD or the dude that's holding the spinning rod upside down. You know, so it's just. But those are the things I try to tell myself, even if my sweet lady has to remind me once in a while.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of talk about that. I wrote that down as something. So kind of the mental game of fishing and tournaments, I do the same thing. I the first hour of the tournament, especially like day 2, I got on a good bite in the morning. I was like, okay, sweet. I got 2 the first hour. I just want 1 an hour, and then go from there and kind of keep that in my head. You mentioned being at peace earlier, but obviously there are times when we fish where things break down. I went 5 hours without a bite, and trying not to spiral out here. What's that look like for you when you're fishing a tough day? And how does that go with the decisions you make on either sticking to the pattern that you had, trying something different? When do you move if you do? Just kind of those thoughts.
So if you remember on day 1 when I caught the 18 and a half, I mentioned that it's very rare for me to show emotion. This is going to get a little bit weird. So I'm a huge John Wooden fan, right? I've read all of his books. He's somebody that has always moved me, and one of the things that he's talked about at great lengths is never get too high or never get too low. Because if you ride an emotional wave, you're not your best, right? So yeah. I try my best to remind myself of that. And then the other thing that I think that everybody watching this, everybody that's gonna watch this, needs to keep in mind: you can be a great angler and have a bad tournament. You can be a great angler and not catch fish in a tournament. It's just the nature of what we do. So I don't. It's gonna sound like I'm freaking Dr. Phil or something like that, dude. But like, I don't attach my self-worth in how I do in a tournament. Now I do attach a lot to how I fish with the opportunities that I find. Fishing clean is super, super important to me. I do all the prep work that I can. And then the other piece that I think a lot of people would benefit from is memory management. Treat your memories almost like you would a hard drive. If it doesn't serve you, delete it. So when you lose a big fish, throwing your rod, being overly emotional, all of those things, it's not going to serve you. Same thing. Well, like I said, I was very frustrated that people were there day 2 that weren't there on day 1. A year ago, definitely years ago, it would have spun me out. It really would have. And I've gotten better the older I get in managing my memories to serve me instead of hurt me. And I think all those things combined, it makes for an unshakable mental approach.
Yeah, no, I like that. I knew day 2, the cleaner water where I was at was going to be busier, and there were some more people in there, but that's kind of the thing too, is a lot of that clean water got dirtied up at least a little bit. I kind of like a film on the layer, but you could tell people were moving. You don't catch a fish for a whole day. You're going to try something different. But there is kind of, I 100% agree. Even if you are going to move and you're going to try to find something, have the respect for the people that are out there. I'd like to look at the leaderboard to see kind of who's out there and see, like, okay, if I see this guy, like if I don't know all these people, but I know a bunch of them. And if they're on the top, I'm going to leave them alone.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Lindsay. Actually, I didn't talk to her the whole time we were there. She was fishing very near where I was fishing, or I was fishing where she was fishing on day 2. I think she was very aware of what was going on, and she gave me a ton of space. It was very, very cool. And to your point, I don't expect it from everybody. I think everybody has their own approach to tournament fishing, and um, I know Leslie got crowded by a dude from Nebraska to the point to where it was a half cast away. That kind of stuff, I would rather lose a tournament. I would rather not catch fish than encroach on somebody so close that my integrity is more important than my finish. Put it to you that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, Corey, there are no spots except the one you're fishing.
That's not true. They're all my spots.
Oh man. Yeah, I had a guy from Arkansas come back to where I was at, and I wasn't guarding the spot the whole day because I did leave to let it reload a couple times, and I kind of came back to it, and he was working his way back to. I don't think he understood, I was working that spot, but big shout out to him. I have no clue who he is, but he did ask. He's like, "Hey, are you fishing back here?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Hey, if you want to come all the way back, I'm not fishing all the way back in the cove and on that side, but I am fishing this area." And he totally respected it. I saw him a couple times that day, and it was cool. And to your point about Lindsay, I 100% have seen that in tournaments before. I've seen people catch limits right across from her, and she will not go over there to the point of if she needs one last fish, she will not go over there. And I love that. I she's like, that's not me,
Well,
I'm gonna find him, how she wants to fish, how she wants to fish, and she's a stick. So
yeah, and again, to Corey's point, which is very accurate. You know what I mean? Like, the Walleye Stampede in Wyoming does something very interesting. So they have 2-day tournaments, and it's a boat tournament, but it's catch, photo, release, much like the kayak tournaments. Names are hidden after day one. So you can see what the benchmark is, but you can't see who caught them. So it doesn't matter if you're in first place or 200th place. The Walleye Stampede pulls tons and tons of anglers. It's a big deal. But our sport is much different because our families that are following us and stuff like that, they want to know what we're doing. And I get that, but I think it's net chasing is a thing in all fishing stuff. It's just
absolutely, yeah.
But again, like I also want to make sure that I relay that no excuses on my part. You know what I mean? I had 3 fish that I don't think. Obviously, I couldn't have won the event with the opportunities I was given, but I think I should have finished top 3 if I fished clean with the opportunities I was given. And it's one of those things where I hooked two fish on day one. One, it's one of those things where talking about going a little bit without a bite. I had gone quite some time without a bite, and I felt something. It's one of those, like I said, I was just exhausted from the trip. And anyway, 17, 18 goes, I don't know, 2 feet out of the water and throws my finesse worm at me. If I was more in tune, I would have been, that would have been a big help. And then the fish on day 2. But when you're fishing a tournament with 190 people, I'm actually, to flip the script a little bit, I'm actually very fortunate that I had the area I did day 1 anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm just a diva, dude. You know what I mean? Like, in Colorado, I do everything that I can to get away from people. I would much rather fish marginal water than prime water, because I think the prime water is you have to divvy up the fish between multiple people, and the marginal water, or even bad water, if you fish clean, you can still win.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is why sometimes I do good and sometimes I really suck.
I'm with you. So let's go over the top Colorado anglers out there. Obviously, you're up front there in 8th place. You were 13th day 1 and 20th on day 2, which really shows you how much the bite dropped off. 21st was the last person that caught a limit both days. 21 people, and that was Alex. So next was Alex. He was the last one to have a limit both days. I was in 27th, Lindsay 33rd, Tim Van Sickler 36th, and then still in the top 40, Paul Roth on 37th. And Paul on day 1 he had a hell of a day. He was in 8th place day one, and his bite just wasn't there for him on the second day, which happened to a lot of people because a lot of that water changed. So
He caught a
it
giant
was
too.
tough.
He caught a 20-incher, right?
Yeah, 20. Yeah, I got a picture of it. Let's pull it up here. Yeah. Let's see.
I could tell you, if Paul had a rough day too, there was no fish in the area because, I mean, I don't have to say anything about Paul. That everybody does know the dude's a stick.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. That's a nice fish.
Goodness.
I love it. Yeah.
And I think he's from Missouri, actually.
Yeah, he's from the area. I talked to him a little bit. He's another one of those dudes. It's just that dude can straight out fish and catch them, and great guy.
Yeah, one of the things that, again, speaking of the community that we have in Colorado, and I talk to Paul after tournaments. He doesn't need a lot. He gets one clue, and he'll ride that until the cows come home.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that kind of wraps up the All-American. You said that's interesting. You thought top 3. Alex and I were pulling up to the awards, and I said I think he can be top 3.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when you get down to that point, I feel like top 5 and 190 people, so many things have to happen perfectly, to get there. So
again, I've said I'm a diva multiple times now, and I'm going to take my divaness up a notch. So my favorite rod is a Phoenix M1, and I broke my favorite rod last year. It's 7.2 medium extra fast. It's a spinning rod. I love it. It's what I would have been fishing in the tournament. I ordered one from Sportsman's before Boyd, and they didn't have it, and it was they gave me a long kind of thing about it. But I think if I had that M1, maybe those 3 fish are a little bit different. I'm going to get one tomorrow, but it's just, sometimes I should keep the excuses to myself. I just can't help it.
No, I'm there with you. I was using some hooks that were not very. I guess this is something we can go into. I want to talk to you about this, but I was using some hooks that, they're okay. And when we were pre-fishing, we did find a pattern. I think we could have moved outside of where we were, but kind of off the bushes and the backs coves, even on to the point where they were on one side of the water by direction, right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of finding that pattern, and it was working. And I wasn't sticking them. I didn't feel good about any of it. I felt like it could just come off. And and at that point, I went to Everhart's, and I was fishing a weighted wacky, and I just went, and I was like, all right, well, I'm getting the best weighted wacky hooks that I can find here. And I didn't. I think I lost. No, I didn't lose a single fish, except for my idiot mistake, which haunted me the whole trip back. I caught this. I'll just let this be a lesson for people out there, because I made the mistake. So I fish day 1, I get a limit. I look at I think I was in like 30th, and I was just happy to have a limit. I think 40 people had a limit. It wasn't a big one, but I knew if I got a limit day 2, it'd go a long way. And we go back to the house. Everybody's retying. I'm like, I'm not retying. I'm good. I know what I'm fishing with. I catch my first fish. It's a 17. I throw back. Maybe 5 casts later, see the line moving. I set the hook. Bing. And it's just, it's gone. And I don't know what that fish was. In my mind, that fish is,
25.
Yeah. In my mind, I'm like, that's another 16 or 17, right? But I'll never know, But retying, taking care of your terminal tackle. I do finally. I have a. I don't know if I got this from you or Matt Flanagan, but I carry a file with me now. I'm sharpening my hooks on. I've got one of those Yak Gear little pouches on my seat, and I just file and sharpen while I'm out there. But I've heard your mentality, as we've talked before, about the point of the hook, connected to your dreams in fishing. But kind of give that spiel, and
Yeah.
specifically to terminal tackle, how important it is to you.
Well, it's one of those things where we work so hard to get opportunities, and to for anybody that doesn't know, I work at Eagle Claw. I fish trocar and laser sharp exclusively. But I'm gonna try to make this as brand agnostic, if you will, as I can. The connecting point between you and everything that you want is a fish hook and line. Those are the two things. The first connecting point is a fish hook. So the shape, the diameter, the sharpness, every single thing about a fish hook, if you don't know about it, you should try to learn about it. And if you have questions, by all means, anybody watching this, anybody ever that wants fish hook information, do I hope you buy American made fish hooks? Yes, I do. But do I want to help you catch more fish with fish hook knowledge? Of course. So it's one of those things that it can't be overstated. It truly cannot be overstated, because I mean, if you think of it a couple different ways, let's say that you are wacky rigging and you have a finesse setup, you're using spinning gear, you've got light line, and you've got a medium light rod. If you're using a wacky rig hook that's medium gauge, that means it takes more force to penetrate, and you're not optimizing your situation, right? And the same thing goes with line. It's just your presentations start at the hook and then you work your way back. So if it's like the flipping hooks that you were talking about, the flipping hooks, it's a larger diameter, so you need more force to penetrate, and all these things you need to think about to capitalize on opportunities and fish clean. And just to echo the line thing, I've got one of the dumbest line things in the history, possibly the history of kayak fishing. So this is Horsetooth a couple years ago, and this is before motors, so it was like 1.5 miles to my spot, or 2 miles, something ridiculous. And at the time, I was willing to basically die to get to my spots as quickly as I could. So I get there, I'm drop shotting, and I remember at one point I was using a 7-pound leader, and I remember looking at the leader. You know how Horsetooth, you're running through a bunch of little fish to get bigger fish. I needed one more fish, and I would have sealed the deal. I ended up taking second in this derby. I remember looking at my leader, and I said out loud, how cool is that? I've used the same leader all day long. And you can imagine what it looks like at this point, right? So I drop back down.
Especially there.
Yep, I drop back down, and it's the bite I've been waiting for all day. And you know what happens. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where carrying a file with you, learning how to sharpen a hook, it'll make a difference immediately. And checking your hooks. 5 years ago, I didn't check my hook points, and I could name probably every fish I lost in a tournament. And I can attribute at least half of them to not maintaining my hooks back then. Yeah. It starts with selection, then it's maintenance, but it's like I said, I hope you guys are buying American-made hooks, but even if you're not, you work too hard to fish with dull hooks. It's just sharpen them up.
Absolutely. Got some comments in here. Chen Char, Trocart is the deal, 100% all I use now.
Love to hear it.
Fish, love it. And then Corey Doyle, solid talk strengths, couple hammers, well worth 30 minutes of my evening. Strive to be better. Thanks, Corey.
Go Nuggets. Go Nuggets.
That's right. Yeah, and I guess this might put it in a different terms. I went 5 hours from my last bite, and I fished until we were done. And if I missed something because of just a dumb mistake, or honestly, I'll just call it out. If I missed something because I was too lazy, that would hurt way more than not getting that bite at all.
I'm never upset when I leave and I finish. There's been times I finished in the 20s at Pueblo. Never upset if I fish clean. Never upset. It's because, again, tournament fishing. Matt Flanagan's post earlier today. like I want to remind people that are new to the sport, or maybe if you've had a bad tournament or something like that. If you had 2 or 3 good tournaments in a row, just wait a minute and you'll see the other side of it. It's just it's the way that it is. And if you have 5 bad tournaments in a row or anything like that, that's the nature of the beast. And when you look at KVD, right? I wasn't a huge KVD fan until I don't know what this says about me as a human being, but until he cried before a tournament on a live, and I went, "That's what I needed to see to love you, dude. I needed to see the human side of you to understand what this means to you, and to also know that you too have to embrace the suck." It's just it's and I would imagine that for people that are new to fishing kayak tournaments in Colorado, it has to be intimidating because, dude, I'm telling you right now, if the All American was at a neutral body of water, I put our anglers up with anybody in the country without even hesitating. You know what I mean? And if I was sitting on a pile of money, I would put the money on us. Yeah. I really, really believe that, because if you look at what we have to do day in and day out, fishing highly pressured, clear water, I think it's iron sharpens iron. Every tournament that we have, one of 25 people could win it. Realistically, yeah. One of 25, and you look at all the people now, and you're just going, dude, it's murderers row of sticks in Colorado. In each tournament where we're beating the snot out of each other just makes us collectively all better.
Absolutely, yeah, and especially CKFC and CKB. I mean, it's the same people really fishing them, but you've got kind of that core at least 20 people that you're like, well, you could beat me, you know, because I think there's some luck to bid onto that as well, but yeah, there's some sticks here. I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
Well, as long as you don't beat yourself, you know what I mean. That's the thing that is the hard. Just echo the memory management and all that stuff. Like the mental aspect of it is, if I didn't have my Leslie, I'll tell you something I forgot to tell you. Between day 1 and day 2, I eliminated 70% of my tackle. I would have never done that before. Watching my wife and her approach and her joy has made me a better angler, tenfold.
Yeah. I won my first tournament last year at Trinidad, and both Trinidad and Boyd, the 2 that I won last year, I had like a different kind of piece on the water, I guess, because it's the only way I can like describe it. But I was just like super relaxed. I wasn't out there from the beginning really trying to prove anything. I was just out there having a good time. Yeah, it was a tournament, so it's still, still competitive. But it was kind of more of just like a peace or a sense of kind of calm out there of, okay, well, we're just going to see what happens today and have fun.
Dude, when it's your time, it's your time. I mean, and until somebody experiences it, I don't think that they can fully understand that it's like everything happens in your favor. You know what I mean? It's like watching a basketball game when all the loose balls seem to bounce one way. That's how, I mean, truly, that's how it's like, it's, I love that feeling. And I think that's what makes this thing that we do so addicting and maddening, right? It's like, but dude, on the other end of that is the guy that took third to you in both of those tournaments. I can also say that it's like, when you do your best and somebody beats you, there's a piece in that too. You know what I mean? It's like, do I want to win? Yeah. And this is something I learned from Leslie. I didn't have this before. Like, I used to leave taking second place a miserable human being. Like, to be honest with you, a miserable human being. I would always go to the awards and I would support people, but when I would drive home, I would go, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Now I don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? I go home and I'm happy for people who finished above me, and it's made me better. You know, it's just, And I think it speaks volumes also to the, I mean, number one, to my wife, you know what I mean? The poor thing has to tolerate me for weeks building up to a tournament. But also to the Colorado kayak fishing community, because we got a lot of people that are worth rooting for. And it's one of those things. I don't root against anybody. I always root for people, and I learned that from my wife. Yeah, it's very cool. But I would have done a little bit better if she didn't beat me at Boyd too.
Yeah, you would have got Angler of the Year.
It was so funny. So it 201
how that played out was just
so 201. I always call her, right. I need to know where she's at, and then I go where she's at, and we go, and I said, sweet lady, how'd you do? And I think she said, well, I don't even think I'm going to turn them in. I didn't get a limit. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, I caught 4. I said, get off the damn phone and turn your fish in right now. And I caught 3, and then afterwards she goes, well, I feel bad. And I said, dear, that you did what you're supposed to do. This is what's supposed to happen. If you didn't turn your fish in, and I get AOY and some weird goofy thing, it's not right. It's not going to feel right. And also, you took second. You earned that. You know what I mean? Like it was just, it was cool and not cool at the same time.
I love it. No, I think that's cool. And for anybody that hasn't followed along, watching you and Leslie is it's so much fun. I want to give you guys a shout out too for like the off season stuff. There's a lot of stuff in Colorado in the off season that you can check out. And I went up to the expo. I don't know, December probably, January. I don't know, probably December. But yeah, watching both of you guys talk about kayak fishing up there, a bunch of people really getting people into telling people what we do. Go out on plastic boats and chase fish around together, and it spreads the sport. I love it. So
yeah, I'd forgotten about that piece of because I've worked at Eagle Claw now. This is my 4th year, and you get wrapped up in work like we all do, and I forgot how much I love doing that. And Leslie was the one that got the opportunity 2 years ago through Sandy, and so when we got the opportunity again, at first I didn't want to give anybody anything, and it's one of those things that's goofy because I'm competitive and I'm secretive about some stuff or whatever. And I was very fortunate. I got to film with Fisherman this past summer, and I was talking to Thomas. He's like, "We are, dude. He's nuts. He's completely nuts." And one of the things I said is like the thing I love about fishing is you're always learning, but there comes to a point where the learning takes a little more time. You know what I mean? Like I said, this is all I've loved as far as a thing my whole life. There's never really been a number 2. And he goes, Eric, you get to a point to where you realize you have to share it or it's not worth anything. And I was like, you dirty dog. And so it kind of helped things a little bit with that.
Awesome. Another comment in here. We got some Georgia boys in the house.
Sweet.
Heck yeah. Good evening, everyone listening from Georgia. Thanks for tuning in. Awesome. Wonder if any of them were down there. I know they had someone from Florida all the way. I think it was the longest traveled person up to the Classic. But all right, I got some questions for you.
Sweet.
We'll do a couple more things, and then yeah. So before we completely leave the All-American, if you could have the All-American, because we kind of talked about it, if you could have it in our lake, where would it be? Doesn't have to be Colorado, in the Midwest or wherever you want. Where would you have it?
I would take all the states that are involved in the All-American. This is an impossibility. I'm just going to say this.
No, got it. Yeah.
So if I remember this right, years ago for the Classic, Ray Scott used to have everybody meet at an airport. They could bring 10 pounds of tackle, and then they went to the lake. In a perfect world, it would be we would give a general location and it would be there, but people wouldn't know until 3 days ahead of time. So it's an equal playing field, but with lodging and all the rest of the stuff, obviously that's not doable. I think Table Rock would be cool. Truman was cool. Dude, honestly, I don't care. I know that sounds crazy, but as long as it's a tough bite, I'm in. If it's everybody's whacking them, it's going to suck because the locals are going to get it. But yeah, I don't. That Truman was cool, but if we can't do the Ray Scott thing, I don't care.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of rotating it around, you know, and then, you know, this is nothing against, you know, the format they have. They put on a hell of a kayak fishing tournament for all of us there, and especially the town getting behind it and Everharts and everything. But I do think it'd be cool, like Oklahoma, they're an example. You know, maybe have it at Broken Bow for a year. You know, Nebraska, have something there. You know, it's just a cool. That's kind of an idea that I've thought about and talked about. But I mean, that's just kind of one of those. Hey, if you're king for a day, what would you do? I think every year I would have at a different state, have them kind of co-host and help out with the, you know, getting it all lined up, and then bring everybody there. So.
I could tell you, I wouldn't have it at Boyd.
No, I wouldn't fish it. Probably wouldn't fish it. No, all jokes aside. All right, so a little piece of housekeeping that I just kind of forgot to mention. So let me pull up the message I got. So Jeremy, who is our bass director, had something. So qualifications for the West Coast Championships. This is something every year the club's able to qualify the top 25% of the first 3 bass tournaments, and everyone that fishes all 3, you'll qualify to fish on Clear Lake August 16th and 17th for the West Coast Championship. I know that's kind of a tough one to get out to for guys, especially being in August and everything. And it seems like it always kind of comes up last minute with the qualifier being so close to it. But hey, if there is something, if that's something you're interested in, and also being Clear Lake, I've heard that it's starting to fish well again. There it is for you. You can have it. And then the last thing I want to talk about before I got like a shotgun round of questions for you is I just kind of want to talk about travel. You know, traveling for the club. You know, the club. I want to shout out. You know, not just the CKFC but the CKB as well. We had over 30 anglers from Colorado that, you know, invested time and money to go out there and spend either a couple days or a week out on this. And I want to thank everybody for putting the time into it. I hope that that everybody, even though it was a tough bite, that they really enjoy themselves, the community. There's a few highlights that I took from it, but I love getting out there and challenging myself first off and learning. I learned a lot about dirty water on this trip. I learned a lot about just kind of stuff that we already talked about, but a lot of the fishing stuff I learned a lot of stuff about my mental game, things that I need to work on the water. But also just enjoying, you know, we had an Airbnb with, I think, 9 of us below the dam, and we would just go out there on the dock, throw a bobber and catch crappie and catfish. And then we had a fish fry one night, you know, and I know several people, I think Pete Erskine and Brett Wendling, I think they did like a float maybe down the past the dam, and they were like on a striper bite, as well as, like, you know, I think everybody out there seemed like they caught either a gar, a crappie, or a catfish as well. But there's a lot of community involved and just good times with people. They had the wall out there, which was the War on Terror wall. Meant a lot to me. I saw 8 of my buddies on a wall in front of me, and that was just a lot. But also there's kind of like the team aspect of it. You know, I'm kind of getting into that. You said, you know, you did the Team Hobie thing. Obviously I'm with Old Town this year and Eco as well. Kind of getting to travel and see those people that are on your team, you know,
very cool.
Kind of cheer for each other throughout the year. But when you actually like make those relationships a little bit more, it's pretty cool to put a face, you know, to the name. The guy you see out there or gal or whatever. But yeah, I thought that piece was really cool. So anybody that's interested next year, maybe you're like tuning into this, thinking about if you're going to go next year. I would highly encourage, even if it's not this, go out and push yourself, get on, uh, if you've done the Colorado thing, or even if you haven't and you're just thinking about going to more of a national or a traveling trip, um, just go do it. And if you're
Mm.
thinking about it at all, just go do it. It'll make you better. Um, Even if you don't have a great time, it'll make you a better angler if that's what you want out of it. So,
Yeah, this was actually my first national deal. Which
no way.
yeah, which makes me a colossal turd because I've been qualifying for them for about a decade right now. But between me having my son and before I got met Leslie and married Leslie and all the rest of the stuff, I just it didn't it never panned out, I guess. And then I did qualify for the national championship in the middle of COVID, so
Oh
that
no.
was a little bit goofy. But yeah, this is my first national thing, and it's for anybody that is curious. If you stay at Bucksaw, you can watch Everybody Loves Raymond nonstop. That's what me and Leslie did, and dude, I'm gonna be honest with you, it was awesome.
I love it. Corey Doyle, we're gonna need a bigger trailer for Clear Lake. I got one on order, buddy. Yeah, I gotta need tandem, one of those
Nice.
fishing Texas ones coming. So excited about that. We'll see how it goes. But all right, cool. So we've talked about an hour now, and we'll do a shotgun round here.
Okay.
Just some questions for you. You don't have to
Sweet.
expand on them. You can just answer quick. If you want to expand, you can. Or if I got questions, I'll ask you. So, all right. So, shotgun round. What is your favorite lake that you fished? Doesn't have to be in Colorado.
It's actually ponds. I if I'm not fishing tournament, I love little hidden ponds. Me and Leslie have a little hidden spot that I actually call Lake Leslie Ann. That's my favorite spot.
Okay. What's your bucket list lake?
Dude, I sound so boring. I honestly don't really have one, dude. I just love fishing. I know that sounds crazy. A Colorado 10 would mean more to me than a Texas 10 or a California 10 or a Florida 10.
I get
Um, and there's some lakes that I'm going to spend more time on that I don't want to talk about on a podcast. But yeah,
All right. Cool.
they're in the
All
state.
right.
They're in the state.
All right. All right. Next question: bass, crappie, or walleye? Which would you rather fish for?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, it's not tough because it's bass, but I like all of them.
All right.
It's
Outside of
bass.
bass. Okay. Crappie or walleye?
There's something special about crappie. I love crappie.
All right. For the eating or for just the nostalgia?
Actually, both. I actually have the state record right now for black crappie. So I've panfish in general, like bluegill. I would probably put bluegill in front of crappie. There's just
Yeah.
something about them there's just something about them I really really appreciate and enjoy.
Awesome. I actually took a video of it, but it didn't translate very well to me having my glasses on.
Mm.
But I saw 6 crappie spawning up on a log.
Oh, it's awesome.
Dude, I just sat there because I mean it was such a tough bite. I was like, I'm gonna enjoy these little things. And Alex was doing his business on the shore, and I'm just over there sitting on my kayak watching these crappie, and they just kept coming on the raw log and rolling
Yeah.
up and doing it. And I that's how I agree. That's how I got into fishing,
Yeah.
crappie fishing with my dad, and I love it. So,
There's
all right,
something about them.
favorite kayak snack.
Whatever my wife makes me.
Smart man. Good
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Favorite Colorado tournament lake.
Anything but Boyd. Like and even Boyd, dude. I honestly, I like Boyd. If there's one thing I can say unequivocally, I have more second place finishes at Boyd than anybody. I know that for a fact. And probably Trinidad when it's on. Trinidad's really special when it's on.
That's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. Who's your favorite pro angler?
Oh, that one's tough. God, dude, maybe Hackney. Um, Actually, no, I take that back. And this is going to be a weird work flex or whatever, because if I didn't work where I work, I would never have the opportunity to call this man a friend. But I'm friends with Shaw. It would be Shaw. He's great to me. He's great to Leslie, and his resume speaks for itself.
Awesome. Leslie, Helly.
Oh yeah, yeah. We were loading up the kayaks, and so she makes me these little wraps. It's sun butter and jelly, and I'm sure I'm like a lot of it. I don't eat until I'm on my deathbed, basically in a tournament. So
if I'm eating, it's a bad day. Yeah.
Yeah. So I go to eat, and immediately I get jelly all over my big stupid stomach. And then I start wiping it on the kayak, and I don't even think about it after that, right? And then we're loading up the kayaks, and Leslie goes, "Oh my God, what is that?" And I just start cracking up. It's jelly.
Oh, that's awesome. Corey, don't take it back. That's everybody's favorite.
Dude,
I do love watching Hackney.
There's something about him. If you guys get a chance, oh God, dude, what's the there's another bass fishing podcast that Zona was on where Zona talks about Hackney. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. Pat Renwick is the host of it. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. I should know the name. Anyways, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Hackney's on it for a little bit. Hackney's got some great Bass U stuff too.
Yes.
Hackney's great.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have the mustache that Shaw does.
Yeah, bass love jelly. New attract. Yeah, just little chartreuse, a little jelly.
Yeah.
Smelly jelly. There you go. Right on. Well, thanks, Eric, for coming on, man. I really appreciate all your time here. I feel like every time I talk to you, I learn a ton, and yeah, I really appreciate it. So,
I appreciate it a ton. It's been fun. So I think most of the time when folks do a podcast, they got to give a shout out to their sponsors and all that stuff, right?
That's my next thing. Yeah, shout outs at the end. Yeah, that's all we got.
So in order, first is to Leslie. So my wife is so patient with me because I am a maniac. I'm a fishing dork, and it never stops, right? I'm like, when at night I'm looking at maps, during the day I'm organizing tackle, I'm pouring jigs in the back, which she absolutely hates. But she has duties that she takes on. I would just eat Cliff Bars, but she makes coffee in the morning. You know, she packs snacks. So as I'm obsessing about my own tournament, Leslie's making sure I'm taken care of, and without her, I'm a shell of what I could be and should be and all that stuff. So, and then obviously our family. You know, we have kids, we have animals. For all the fun that we had at the All American, which included 742 dead armadillos sightings. I'm convinced that all of them, but like 2 are dead in Missouri. We couldn't do it. You know, Leslie's mom, she watched our dogs. One of our daughters, like we have multiple. Our daughter watched our guinea pigs, which is a big thing in the Allee household. Nice. And then my folks watched baby Eric and his basset hound. So basically family, but number one, Leslie, she's the love of my life, and none of this is possible without her.
That's awesome. Yeah, we love Leslie. Even though she kicks our butts at all the tournaments, but
yeah. The thing that's funny too. So going back to the spot when I found it, Leslie said this too. She goes, I think sometimes you forget I'm in the tournaments too. And I found the spot. I was sold. Like there was no convincing me otherwise, which makes me less than an ideal partner. And then Leslie started having obviously a tough bite. So if it was me, I would have been frustrated. I would have tried to fish harder and all the rest of the stuff, which you know as well as I do. When the bite's tough, fishing harder doesn't equate to more success. Leslie explored and had fun. She's just as competitive as we are, but I think she understands it a little bit better than most. So I thought that was pretty cool too.
That was cool. There's something to it, you know. My last day of pre-fishing, I found out. I knew pretty quickly that. So I found the spot that I fished at 3 days before. So 3 days before, then I had a day where it was crappy water. I knew I wasn't going there, and I had a flat tire and all this other stuff. And then day before the tournament, I pre-fished, and I just knew it didn't feel good. I wasn't going back there. And I got on a point. I threw live scope on. I didn't use live scope most of the tournament. Threw it on, and I saw a giant wave of crappie, and I sat there and I caught crappie for 20 minutes.
That's awesome.
Just having fun,
Dude, I can't forget to say this. Why it's important in my heart, I have no idea. But on day one, same thing with. So I run Active Target, same stuff, different brand.
Yeah.
And so the brush piles came out a little bit. I completely forgot about this. So the brush piles came out a little bit, and when the bite slowed down, I would scope around, and I found little wolf packs. I found them twice, and it was just it was so interesting that I was catching them on a Nico rig even out there. And this goes. Do you know Drew Gill, the young guy? So I heard through the grapevine that Drew Gill, while everybody else is a jig and a minnow, he's using a Nico rig. So it was just kind of interesting when you said live scope. I kind of forgot about the kind of bee pattern that I was working intermittently. And I completely interrupted the flow of the podcast, so I'm sorry for that.
No, it's good. I did a little bit of that. I threw it on in the morning when I get to my spot, because my spot started out at 5 feet of water, and I was in over 10 when I fished the last day of the tournament. And I threw it on, and I saw some roaming, and they were kind of in and out, and I just shut it off, and I said, we're just going to be grinding here, Yep. I need to play around with perspective mode a lot more. It's kind of a goal of mine this year, but it's tough. It's tough to focus on, capitalizing on things that you've learned and you're trying to master versus trying to get another tool, I guess.
Well, that was one of the things that I think if I was fishing the tournament by myself and not with my wife, I would have completely gambled. And I would have ran perspective mode in the muddiest water I could find looking for beds. And I could have completely zeroed, and I think I would have been okay with it. So I was talking to my buddy Ethan. There was a tournament. It was a Toyota. I think it was in Oklahoma. I can't remember. Maybe it was Grand. But anyways, the guy that won, that's what he was doing. He found dirty water, and he was fishing beds in perspective mode. And I played with it enough to where I'm accurate with it in shallow water. But like we were talking, when I play with it, it's when I already know what the fish are doing. That way I have a way to gauge it. It's just one of those things, like you said, though, you work so hard to learn the normal stuff. It's when to switch. And I can tell you, it's now for anglers like you and I and a lot of people that are watching this. It's now. Right. Now's the time to push it, because in 2 years everybody's going to be good at it. So there's going to be a window where if you utilize it early, you're going to get the benefits and the suck. Absolutely.
I've been this past week. I've really been kind of looking at more bed stuff and perspective, and that's my this is my homework for you. Since you have relationships with people in the industry. Please have someone put a good video out. There are so many videos on LiveScope with people catching fish, and there are some really good forward-facing videos out there on the nuances of what they're doing, the stuff that we're really dialing in on. And this is nothing against like Garmin Guru, but there's a level above that I've seen on the forward-facing, and I'd love to see that. I'd love to just watch someone fishing on beds and explaining what they're doing. I mean, they're going to give away a ton of juice as well, but that's what I've been just trying to find. And I'm like, where is this? I know it's out there.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. So I think that obviously it is, there's people doing it right now and there's people doing it at a high level, but they're not going to give it away until they have to. So there's two things that can take place in my mind. I'm trying to think of how to word this without sounding like a turd, but I've sounded like a turd this whole time. So why do I care now? Somebody's either going to have to win a derby at the highest level, meaning an elite series or maybe a BPT thing, for it to be covered, or to start on those 10,000 hours or whatever it is now and utilize it in your own fishing, and you be the one that puts it out. I mean, honestly, because the thing is it's when it comes to a lot of that stuff, by the time it hits, it's because it has to. It's not because somebody wants to give it away, which is great in the world that we live in now. Now it comes out earlier, but the chatterbait. So we had a version of a chatterbait blade that was called the Acre Shaker. And it, just to kind of tell you, to give you a window when some of these things come out, we had it. You had to attach it to a jig. Never took off. It was a laser sharp Acre Shaker. The guy's name was Guy Acre. This is way before the chatterbait came out, right? So then Rad Lures comes out with a similar thing, and it doesn't take off. And they're not making money. They're not killing it. A guy starts winning tournaments, and when he started winning tournaments, it went from Rad Lures selling a couple baits to Rad Lures having to find a partner that happened to be Z-Man, which was an OEM company at the time, because they had 500,000 orders like that. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing. It's like it's a yin and yang of when to release this kind of information. But the cool thing with how your mind works, like, dude, I'm going to sound like a maniac here, and I'm okay with it. I'm a turd maniac, or whatever you want to say. When I know somebody makes me better, I follow them closely. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things. There's folks in our club that have all the abilities to do exactly what you're talking about. Now, are they going to be kind enough to create a video on it and help everybody else with it? I don't know that I'm that kind, but you might be that kind.
I don't think I'm the guy. I can think of 2 or 3 others that are there. I think we can think of the same person that's got the right setup for it. But
yeah,
it's cool. It's just something, there's always something next. I think a good example of it, not to belabor this too long, is Live Scope came out, or just forward facing sonar, and all the pros had it for sure, right?
mm-hmm.
But look at the boats now. You're talking 4 or 5 units on there of forward facing sonar, not graphs.
Yeah.
And there's kayaks now that have at least 2 transducers for forward facing on. One's in perspective and one's in forward. And are people going to complain about it? 100%.
Yeah.
People are going to complain about anything. That's what people do. They complain. But
I'll tell you what intimidates me. It's somebody with a clean kayak and 2 rods, right? That to me, that's intimidating.
When I launched day 2, I told Alex that there was a dude from I think Nebraska or Arkansas. I said, that's the scariest dude at the boat ramp. He had 2 spinning rods and he was going out. That was it. And I was like, that guy knows what he's doing. Like he's got the juice. Like that, because
that it's our security blanket, right? When you carry 8 rods with you and 25, 35 pounds of tackle, it's a security blanket. When somebody is so confident in what they're doing, that it's the same thing with if somebody's watching you and I during a tournament, or somebody else during a tournament that has forward facing sonar, and they reach down and they turn the power button off. That's a statement. It's like, look, dude, I know what I'm doing. I'm keyed into this. I don't need this. I actually turned my sonar off more than people would probably think, even with active target. It's just it's from the swim bait days where it's like there's times where I don't mind pinging, and there's other times that I do. But yeah, the simplicity. Look at Leslie and the tackle that she carries. She's there's a reason why when she's on them, she's so deadly, and it's the paradox of choice is not a thing that she messes with.
Yeah, there's something cool about the simplicity too. I'm getting another kayak that I'm just going to strip down and just pond hop with. Chat even up. Yeah, specifically market baits, rods. Yeah, absolutely. It's all out there. So
yeah.
But it's cool. I mean, it's cool how much I've learned about, regardless of what the argument is on it. I don't even want to get into it too bad, but I've learned a lot about fish and a lot about structure. And I think that for me, that was when I turned the leaf on saying that I can fish with forward facing sonar. I had it for probably a year. And then when I said that I could fish with it is when I stopped fishing fish and I started fishing structure.
I tried to explain that same thing to a buddy. It's like I find where they're eating and then I just fish. Like to all the guys and gals in the club that are new to forward facing sonar this year, just remember it's a tool. Trinidad, when Leslie took second a couple years ago, we get done at the tournament, we're driving home, and she's looking at me kind of funny, and I'm like, you know what? I know that you're a big deal now because you're winning, you're making money in tournaments, but I go, yeah, what are you looking at me like that for? And she goes, you act like you don't know how to fish. And I was looking at the sonar out in 15, 20 foot of water at Trinidad, and it becomes a time suck that you have to suck with to get good at. And I think a lot of people that are new to it, the misconception is that it's like the secret. You know what I mean? Like it's this thing that just automatically catches fish. And it's like, all you have to do is think about how many fish you fished to that you could see in the water and how that's not always successful, to understand that forward facing sonar is just a tool. And I think Leslie might be the only person I know that has no interest in forward facing sonar, but doesn't have like the moral dilemma against it. You know what I mean? It's like, if you want to use it, fine. I don't need it. I just need to know the temperature and the depth.
Corey Doyle. He's something too. He doesn't care. Like,
no,
there's people like that, and you know what? Like, I love it. Corey knows his strengths in fishing, and he's gonna fish how he's gonna fish, and he's not. But it's awesome because people don't get in your head that way, you know.
Smart man. Yeah. Smart man. I got a question for you, real quick.
Yeah.
A couple years into forward facing sonar, what's the easiest fish to catch on forward facing sonar?
I would probably say, so I've got a bait that I've caught every fish on, and every different species. Got bass, crappie, catfish, carp, both type of bass here. I would say the easiest type of fish that I've caught, as long as they're active, is carp.
Really?
Outside of that, oh yeah, I had a pretty giant carp bend out a hover rig, core tackle hover rig.
Unbelievable.
Truman. Crappie, probably just, and I think that's a matter of them schooling up as hard as they do.
Yeah. So let me let me refine a little bit. The easiest bass to catch on forward facing sonar.
Oh, smallmouth.
So have you targeted roamers yet?
I've tried. I have got a few. I've got them in the winter. The best. And I think that's because I was focusing on it more. A lot of times it's a cool thing to see, but if you have forward facing sonar and you throw out a drop shot, and especially when they're all schooled up, it is like watching just a wave. They come up to it, and as the drop shot falls down, they all follow it, and maybe somewhere in the middle they hit it, maybe it goes all the way to the bottom, but and they could be super small, but yeah, it's pretty cool how they school up. But the roamers are tough. I'm gonna go fish Kentucky Lake for the All-American, and I've been watching a lot of guys kind of how they're doing it out there, and it's tough. What do you think about it?
So if you're, and this is more of a cold water thing, but if at any point, if you're scoping and you're in 25 foot of water, 30 foot of water, 15 foot of water, and there's a fish a foot or two under the surface, if you target that fish, it's the easiest bass you'll ever catch in your life. It's almost, now I don't think you can pattern them is the hard part. So as tournament anglers, you're kind of, you're setting yourself up for some heartbreak. But if you ever see that, and especially at Kentucky Lake, like a lake that's got a mixed bag, a largemouth and smallmouth, if you ever see that, you take the power switch or whatever you're throwing at the moment, and you throw to him, and it's almost a guarantee. Kyle Cortania, he's one of our pros. I talked to him about it at length, and it's, the hard part is you don't know why they're at where they're at. You know what I mean? Like I was catching them, same thing, winter bite. I was catching fish in 38-degree water that made no sense where they were at. They're 3 feet under the surface over 20 foot of water, but I could pitch a hover rig at them, and you could call your shots. You could say that this is a done deal, dude. Bam, and you can catch them. Into the thing you're saying with the drop shot, there's a point at Quincy where the perch are so abundant that it's the same thing. They look like little minions or whatever. There was one day, as it goes to you watching the crappie a little bit, I couldn't get bit. They went from drop shot friendly baits and the stuff that I was throwing to, they wanted nothing to do with what I had. But I watched them on live scope or active target. I watched bass go through piles of perch like a killer whale going through seals. And I watched it. I probably saw 10 eats in 15 minutes. One of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. Now you would think I would have taken that information and, got a perch HUD or something like that, started catching fish. No, buddy. I just looked at it and then went home.
Yep. Yeah. I get it. Chen Char says walleye or crappie or trout. He's just picking all of them. Jen, you just got to pick one. Walleye are fun to target, especially in the winter. I was throwing an A-rig, and it was cool because I could see the walleye kind of just hanging out on the bottom. And you always catch that one that's the cool thing about forward facing is what you learn about fish, and you learn that like fish are like people. They all have different personalities and different attitudes. Like some are way more aggressive than others, they're animals. And this thing, I threw my A-rig, it comes over probably 5 or 6 walleye, and the one that it came over first, that sucker just screamed.
That's awesome.
And passed all of them and just hammered it. And I got on an awesome A-rig bite on walleye this winter. That was a lot of fun.
I like walleye over about 8 pounds. Anything under that, I like catching them because they're fun to eat. But they reach a certain size where their head shakes. Big walleye have a different feel with a head shake that I love catching. It's like chasing big pike. I love hooking into a fish that makes me afraid to lose it. Like I will say that with walleye, but the thing, Colorado's got a lot of big walleye. They don't come easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's my bucket list trip is probably to take my dad onto Erie.
That'd be sweet.
And go do that. So.
Yeah, catch a bunch of 10-pound walleye and put them in a 5-gallon bucket like everybody else does.
Yeah, right. Why not?
What's the one that has a green walleye? Is that Winnebago? Is that which lake that is? Or
I know what you're talking about. It's up there. Yeah.
It's in Canada. I got to be honest. I'm trying to think fishing, and I keep seeing the telly behind you, and it's making me think about playing guitar.
Oh yeah, a couple instruments back there. That's a whole other podcast. I got a keyboard down here, and
nice.
There's a lot of people. We need to have a show about this. Matt Flanagan, you play guitar.
Yeah.
I play instruments. There's a lot of people that fish that play instruments. What's his name? Yak, dude's from Dusty Slay or whatever.
Yeah.
He's from Chicago. He's on the Holy team, I think. He plays keyboards. So there's a bunch, So.
Yeah, the patterns and the thought process, and I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. Cool. All right, cool. Well, we've been on here a while, but Eric, it's really been fun talking to you. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We still have people. Don't look like anybody even left, so
very cool.
Enjoyed this one, which is awesome. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks everybody for tuning in. The next tournament is up at Pueblo, so sign up for that if you haven't. Good luck to everybody up at Horseshoe this weekend as well. You got that Bassmaster qualifier there. Pretty exciting stuff, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Eric, stay tuned. I'll see you in the green room here.
Appreciate it.
Yep.